Okay, we're on to the next segment of our podcast. It's called Insight Development. And
Mhm.
one of the things I like to do is when I'm taking my dog for a walk, is whenever a thought occurs to me, I call them insights or in betweens. I teach the debaters to look at issues from sideways angles and don't look at everything straight. When you look at things sideways or change your angle, you tend to see it in a different light or in a different way. And so whenever an insight occurs to me, I record it on my phone and I just file it away. Well, today I'm bringing two of my insights back. We're going to listen to them together and just chat about them. Okay. The first one, oh, I guess I should play the music. Insight development. Oh, try that again.
Don't worry. This is your first episode. There's going to be technical
Thank you.
issues.
Thank you. Insight development. Oh, for the love of God. Insight development. Got it. All right. The first insight is on the topic of loneliness. So let's listen to what I said about loneliness and then we'll talk about it. We were born alone and we die alone. We shouldn't rail against it. There's a reason we all feel lonely. It's in our nature. And so how does it serve us? Well, maybe it makes us cope with loss. Or maybe it makes us stronger, self-reliant. First of all, do you agree with the premise that loneliness is in our nature, that it's something that every human being experiences?
I don't think it's in our nature. No, I disagree with the initial premise of that. That we're come into this world alone. We don't. There's a very important person there with us, called our mother. So nobody is born alone. And people do die alone, and I think that's a tragedy. And I think that we are social creatures. I think it's dangerous in some ways to start embracing loneliness because as a sort of as an ideal in some ways, because people are alone, not by choice, and loneliness is a growing sort of epidemic in our world and a pandemic in our world
But if
in
it
some
is so
ways.
prevalent in the world, shouldn't we
Mhm.
figure out a way to embrace it and deal with it and cope with it as opposed to
No,
letting it
no.
overcome us?
No, I think we should figure out ways to reach out more to our fellow human beings and reach out more to people around us in a more meaningful way. I think that the epidemic of loneliness is an indicator of something that's deeply wrong in our society, and
Do you
that we
think then
need
it's
to.
incumbent on a government to create a branch of the government or an agency that deals with this issue since it's so prevalent?
Well, no, I don't know about that. I mean, I think it already can fit into a variety of different institutions that we already have. Education systems, our mental health systems, our education. I mean, especially education systems. I mean, creating communities and creating new ways of interacting with each other. I mean, we learn that at a very young age, right? The way we structure family, the way we structure our lives, the idea of the nuclear family. How do we move away from that and back to an idea of kinship and relations, right? I mean, I think we're
Is it
starting to
possible
learn.
that loneliness is kind of the other side of an equation, like the yin and the yang? Like without sadness, there can't be happiness. So there's a value in sadness. And even though it doesn't feel good to be sad, it serves its place. Is loneliness the other side of something that we are or we need?
I mean, that's a good question, but I don't think so. I mean, my initial sort of instinctual response to that is that there's nothing that balances loneliness. I mean, sadness in terms of that dichotomy of sadness and happiness. I mean, they balance each other in some ways, right? And I think there is a space for sadness in our world. But I guess the question then is, what would be the yang to loneliness or the yin to loneliness, right?
Maybe being social, being together, being gregarious. Like some
But that's
people
not
I
a,
know
that's not
that
yin yang. That's not yin yang though. That's opposites, right? And then yin yang isn't the idea of opposites. It's the idea of complementarian, things that are complementary, right? I don't think that sociability is the complementary to loneliness. I think it's the opposite of loneliness, right?
or
And I
maybe
think
it helps us appreciate being with people, or being around people, or actually appreciating people?
Well,
If
that's
we, if
different
we,
though. That's different though. I think that's solitude, right? I think solitude is an important skill that people do need to learn, I think, and embrace, right? There's something to be said about being alone in that sort of solitude, sense of solitude, and being in our own minds and being with ourselves, which is a different thing than loneliness, I think, though.
all right, let's move on to the second insight of the day, and that is the upside of aging. So you and I are
Mm.
both, we have reached the halfway mark if we're going to live to 100. And so let's hear my insight about the upside of aging. Your waning energy as you get older complements the fact that you're not going to live out all of your dreams. It helps you accept that. A younger person would find that harder to accept as they race towards an uncertain future with a sense of urgency. An older person is resigned to the reality of their present and realistic about the future. It's a much calmer mode of life. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I entirely agree. I mean, and I think what you're getting at, it seems to me, is a certain level of, we have different words for it: maturity, wisdom, this idea of not only accepting that we may not achieve all of our dreams, but accepting that that's okay, right? I mean, accepting that looking at ourselves and just being comfortable in our skins, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
When
I
when I
think that's
teach when I teach debating, there's a question that comes up about, why is it that older people or old people don't seem to be freaking out about getting older, but young people, if you ask them about getting older, they always act as if older people have one foot in the grave, and they're marching towards death. But when older people don't find it so alarming, do you know why that is?
well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, let me just throw another question at you, like just to sort of maybe complicate that a little bit. We have different phases in our lives where we treat aging in different ways, right? Like when we're 12 years old, we can't wait to be teenagers. When we're teenagers, we can't wait to be, an adult and 20 something. And then at a certain point, we start to see aging in a different way. Like in our 20s, we start to see older people. We don't want to get there in some way. I mean, I don't know if it's, is it a fear of death? Like if we want to philosophize, get philosophical about it. I mean, as we approach death, our relationship with time changes as we sort of.
Well, is it also has something to do with our energy is waning? And so as nobody tells you that, when you get older, you don't stay the same. You have a different capacity for life. And when you're young, you're full of vim and vigor, and you can take on almost any challenge. But as you get older, the possibilities of what you can achieve just becomes narrowed down.
Well,
And
let's look at it. Let's look at it a different way. Let's shift our point of view on that a little bit, right? Like, I mean, rather than look at it as the vigor of youth is often chaotic, right? I mean, and often a lot of energy is wasted. And we can talk about the all of those years as teenagers and 20 somethings, and we threw our energies at so many different things because we just wanted everything. And a lot of it just didn't go anywhere because we
yeah,
weren't mature enough to recognize that focused energy,
yeah,
focusing on something is
yeah,
much more productive in the end, right? And that
yeah,
takes maturity, that takes age.
yeah. Yeah, that issue comes up in debating quite often too, with when I'm working with young people. This idea that, when you're young, you're like you said, you're flailing wildly and you don't know where to put all of this crazy energy. But the moment we say, Mark Twain says, the two most important days of your life is the day that you're born, and then the day that you figure out why.
Mhm.
And so that day that you figure out your purpose, why I was born, you get all of a sudden you have a focus, and now
Mhm.
you know where to put that energy. And so when you have that focus and you know what to do with that energy, know where to direct it, that means in every day after that, you're marching towards your goal. And that makes you
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
happy,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
and not so anxious about life.
Yeah. I mean, the only caveat I would place on that, and I agree with you, learning what you want out of life is such an important thing, right? But at the same time, I think, you know, what a person wants out of life changes as well, and can change. And we should always be willing to like change gears and go in a new direction. You know, there's no reason at any age to decide to change gears and go in a new
All
direction. So